Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Korlick from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, it's Adam here. Welcome to the Figure It Out cast for December 2019, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. This is Gary, who is also known as Rock Solid Productions. Please introduce yourself. Also, he is not John Riggs.
No, I'm Ron Jiggs. That's the name that I go by there is Ron Jiggs. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm a little hurt that you had those two Hammeneggers on last month. The gaming off the
Off the grid. They're nice guys.
They are nice guys. Although you gotta question the whole beard thing, and I think there's a little, they're more than friends if you get the drift there. But no, they are great guys.
I'm assuming you know them or something.
Oh, absolutely. We have.
I was like, damn, this is like getting hot for no reason. This is crazy.
No, they are.
Jerry.
Well, we have some plans coming up for a convention next year that we are going to surprise another YouTuber with. So, yes, great guys. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed that episode here as well. For those who haven't heard of me or whatnot, just another retro YouTuber here, retro and modern. Been doing this now since June or July of 2017. Started out, so the company I worked for at the time, I was actually the social media guru for them, and I got moved to another position in the company. I still wanted to do something creative, and I didn't want to do something RC related because I didn't want to worry about like conflict of interest, all that bullshit. So it's like, what do I want to do? I love consumer electronics, so I started doing do I want to do cell phone reviews, unboxings, and after a while you realize cell phones are expensive to keep buying time after time. And I looked at things I was looking to do myself, and things that I was getting asked about. And in 2017, that was kind of the peak of people looking to cut the cord. So I started doing videos on, cord cutting, getting rid of your cable company and everything. And then one day, it's funny that you mentioned John. I was looking for, just games that I could play on my Retron 5 that were imports that I didn't need to know any Japanese. Well, guess who's got a video about that? Riggs and Metal Jesus Rocks. And I'm like, I can do this. And from there, I started. I think the first real video I worked on that was retro gaming related was a review of either the Retron HD or maybe it was the Gamers Tech HD. It was one of the 8-bit NES clones, and the sky's been the limit since then. So we've had just amazing. We've been blessed here on the channel. I've been able to meet you. I've been able to meet and hang out with Riggs. In a little bit over 2 years, we just recently crossed over 8,000 subscribers on the platform, and we're just having fun. That's the biggest thing, is we're just having fun.
Good, and congratulations on your success. And you guys, if you can, go subscribe to him. He's really good. I know he is because I steal content from him all the time. Every video he makes, I'm like, oh, that's a good resource. I'm just gonna pretend this came out of my mouth and I thought of this. No,
and you're not even actually, a Patreon of mine, dude. Seriously.
I'm kidding.
Right? I know.
I mean, you make good content. Don't get me wrong, but
you go to John first, and then it's like, I want to see another.
Of course, I go to John first. If John's done the video, I steal from him. Come on. No. In all seriousness, though, actually, I want to thank you again. One of the videos of yours I quite enjoyed was the one you did not that long ago about modding a Super Famicom Junior. Why don't you just take over there, because obviously you did the whole thing.
Well, and I think one of the reasons that you kind of glossed over there is the reason why you enjoyed that video, because it was your Super Famicom Junior that I modded.
It was my Super Famicom.
You dirty.
Thank you.
So, I mean...
I swear I'm actually nice in person. You've met me.
Yeah, and you know what's great is... So before I get into it, I just want to tell a story. One of the first times... It was actually the second time that you and I kind of talked and hung out. It was 2018 at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. I don't know if you remember this, but we went out, you and Ryan Schlemmer, Ryan from CastleManiaGames.com, and the Pixel Games
we all went to Red Robin.
What's that?
We went to Red Robin, I remember.
We went to Red Robin, and Gabbo from the Pixel Game Squad was there. And Gabbo, like you, is a huge Sega nerd. And he had seen you walking around the convention before. Oh, I want to talk to Adam. He is a very smart guy.
I remember that, yes.
And as I don't want to... He wasn't fangirling, But to see you and him at dinner just interacting with each other as two guys that are super passionate about this hobby, it's going to sound stupid, I'm sure, but it warmed my heart to see that. It's very similar to earlier this summer, I had a live stream, I think is when I hit 5,000 subs. And Ian from the CU podcast came into my chat and just hung out with people and acted like a regular. I mean, not that I've never had anything but good interactions with Ian, but just hung out like a regular guy. So if longer story longer, if any of you folks ever see Adam or myself or John Riggs or Metal Jesus Rocks at a convention, don't be intimidated. Don't be starstruck. Just go up to him. If you want to talk to him, just go up and introduce yourself and say, hi, this is who I am. I enjoy your content. And that's the start of a relationship or a friendship or a communication, as it were. Anyways.
He's 100% correct about that, yeah.
I mean, and that's...
Yeah.
In my previous life, I used to get to go and interview NASCAR drivers. So, like, a couple of weeks after he won his first NASCAR championship, I interviewed Tony Stewart. And I was freaking out looking into it because, like, holy crap, this Tony Stewart, he just, this was early 2000s, big deal. And I looked to someone that I mentor. It's like, how do I do this? He's like, first of all, you're there when you're interviewing him, you're there to make him look good. I'm like, I can do that. Ask your first three questions. The first three questions you ask, make sure that they're the most important ones and that you want to make sure you get an answer to because time is never guaranteed. I can do that. And treat them like a regular person because at the end of the day, they're a regular person that just has a really killer job. So, and that's the best way I can look at it. Anyways, back to the Super Famicom Junior, you son of a...
Yes!
So, I got into retro gaming with my Retron 5. Go ahead.
I just want to say to them, in case they're missing this a little bit, he and I are ribbing each other because we're buddies. This is not like anything else. Just letting you know, we're friendly, so it's okay to pick on each other. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If I'm not picking on you, I don't like you, and vice versa. It's one of those where iron sharpens iron. So if we're having a good back and forth conversation that's just ripping and digging on each other, it's all meant in good fun.
Exactly.
Just call me Ron Jiggs is all I ask.
Okay. That actually sounds like
a porn name, doesn't it?
I'm Ron Jiggs. Ron Gigolo. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I wish you wouldn't have mentioned that because I saw a picture of Ron Jeremy recently, and one of the memes is, I'm going to tell my kids this. So it was a picture of Ron Jeremy, and I'm going to tell kids that this was Captain Lou Albano. Dressed up as Super Mario from the Super Mario Super Show. All right, back to the stupid Super Famicom Junior. So
yes,
I got into imports back with my Retron 5, and one of the reasons why I got into imports is if you haven't been paying attention, Japanese Super Famicom games and Famicom games, they're hella cheaper than the U.S. versions just because there were so many of them.
Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah, I know, right? A lot of people very
Dude,
condensed
I've been to Japan 12 times in the last 2 years. I know.
That's it?
I've seen them. Yeah, I know. I gotta get my game up.
Yeah.
Step it up. So
sorry. I've been looking at how to get the best picture out of all of my consoles, really. So, HD Retrovision makes a great product with their HD Retrovision cables.
They do.
And unfortunately, right now, you really can't get your hands on the Super NES ones.
You should. They're based actually here in Chicago. They invited me to come to their office. You should come up and we should go.
I will take you up on that because they've actually invited me as well, and it's just been a while.
Boom.
I haven't had a chance to do it.
All right, let's get that done. Anyway, see, we're friends. We're making fun of each other, but we're friends. Anyway, go ahead.
Only if we go to Giordano's first.
That's fine. We can do that.
So, anyways, going through, and I had bought, my original Super NES does RGB right out of the box. How do I know that? I watched Adam's video. I know, yeah, fangirl. Hi. And then I bought a regular Super Famicom. Again, does RGB out of the box. How did I know that? Adam's video. And actually, that's how Adam and I first started talking was at Missouri GameCon 2018. I went up and thanked him because I followed his steps on how to retro-write my Super Famicom. It's like, turned out great. Just wanted to say thank you. Again, one of those, you see someone you know or you follow at a convention and whatnot, just go say hi.
I actually then proceeded to punch him, and I told security, don't let this guy touch me ever again. But he doesn't remember it that way because of the head injury. But I was nice to you. That's what happened.
I know. Yeah, it's a rare occasion. Wait until we talk about Mr. Maynard later and what you do to that poor bastard.
God.
And then I had picked up a Super NES Junior. I don't remember if I ordered it off at eBay or if I got it locally from our store, Live Action Games. Cheap plug there, Adrian. But it's one of those things that the Famicom or the Super NES Junior didn't do RGB out of the box, and I found that there were some mod kits that you could quickly and easily go ahead and do RGB out of the box. So I did that to my Super NES Junior. Looked fabulous. And
the Super the Super Nintendo Junior, like I got one modded actually before this one. A dude modded like a regular one, like a dude who lives in Russia now, and Tim and he was incredible at it, and he put an LED in it, and it was impressive. I was actually like legit stunned by how pretty it was.
And so I did this mod to mine, loved it. Did that same type of mod too. The N64 doesn't do RGB out of the box. Did that RGB mod out of the box, or RGB mod to my N64. I also did a live mod of that at Portland Retro Gaming Expo this past year for Mr. Maynard.
I remember that.
And for those of you who have never tried to mod a system, let alone do it in front of a live studio audience, no pressure. But I wound up, I loved my mod and whatnot, and I'd actually talked to Ryan Schlemmer from Castlemania Games a little bit. It's like, you know what, I really appreciate what Adam does, and this isn't me sucking up. This is actually just me. I appreciate when other people do things for the community they're involved in, whether we're talking, like I said, I've been involved in the RC community since 1992, been in retro gaming now, in a semi-serious way, as serious as you can be about video games, since 2017. It's one of those where I appreciate those who give back to others. So I talked to Ryan, it's like, do you think Adam would let me RGB mod his Super NES Junior? He's like, yeah, go ahead, talk to him about it. So, for a while, we were trying to make this happen. It's like, you know what? I'm going to do your system live here on the floor. We're not going to make it a part of a panel, but if anyone wants to see how it's done, we'll do it here live on the floor. And then the Friday came to leave for Mo Game Con, and I still don't have my package with the parts. Son of a bitch! So basically, I just took the system, brought it home, did the mod here and everything. Took about 25, 30 minutes to actually do the mod. With filming it and everything, took about an hour and a half, just because moving camera, moving lights, so on and so forth. But it's one of those that I'm actually jealous of the way your Super Famicom Junior turned out, because it looks and I didn't expect it, because I used the exact same mod board, the same cables and everything. It actually looks better than my Super NES Junior. So I don't know if there were board differences between the two, but I was really excited to see that myself, and now I don't have one yet, but one of the next things I do want to pick up is a Super Famicom Junior. It's a gorgeous piece of hardware.
Now, see, that I did not know, that it actually outperformed the Super Nintendo Junior. I wonder if that's why they're kind of hard to get, because even in Japan, those things are not, they don't come up very much, and when they do, you typically find them for like $70 to $80.
Yeah, and that's what I've been seeing them for, has been, because you've got imports and whatnot and everything. So, yeah, I've been seeing anywhere between 80 and 100.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, they're a little cheaper in person, but not enough to be like, oh, good, I'll just get tons of these. Interesting. But thank you very much for doing that modification. I appreciate it.
Well, like I say, it's one of those things where I appreciate, and this isn't me fondling or
no, you can fondle. So you just have it. You just go for it.
Thank you. But it's just one of those where I appreciate when folks, like, John Riggs is another one where we've talked about, or he and I in the past have talked about, like cleaning games, and he likes using the 1-Up cards. I like them too; they're a good product. But he and some others, Forever and a Day, and I don't know that I've ever seen you do anything with Brasso, but so many people were using Brasso to clean the connectors on cartridges. Like, oh, that's so harsh and abrasive. And through my RC racing, I had found, actually some friends of mine up in Seattle had found this stuff called Bright Boy, and we actually used it for cleaning RC motors. And the nice thing, like, we would sit down. There were dynos and whatnot that we'd throw motors on. We'd put different drops on in the motors and whatnot, and check the current draw and the torque and the RPM and this, that, and the other thing. And we could actually see discernible differences when we used one cleaner versus another. So we could tell if current flow was being inhibited. So, knowing how much John does to give back and help people get their cartridges running again, sending him a bottle of Bright Boy, it's like that was a no-brainer.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you're making strides, my friend. I appreciate your contributions to the community, and keep on being awesome. Actually, when you mentioned Brasso, I had this vague memory. I swear I saw somebody at some point, I don't remember if it was a joke or not, but they made a video about cleaning games with Brasso and steel wool.
I want to say that was Joe with GameSack.
It's possible. I honestly don't know. It's just this one little memory I've got somewhere, but I have no idea where it was. Not that it matters. But anyway, we're going like constantly on off tangent, which is bad even for me. So do you want to move on to the next subject?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so you specifically wrote down that you wanted to talk about HDMI cables for retro consoles, so I will let you lead the way here.
So, and part of it is because you just did a video on this with the Pound and the Hyperkin cable, and I've done several within the past, 8 to 12 weeks on very similar cables. And one of the first things you noted was save state's the wrong word, but like the sleep state where it says no signal, how it's pretty much the same. I came to the exact same conclusion. There's actually, I had tested an AV to HDMI adapter a year and a half ago from some company, and that was the first one that I saw that actually had the screensaver as you were. By and large, I don't know that you're going to find a whole lot of difference from one manufacturer to the other performance-wise. Now, you noticed a brightness difference, which I always have in my videos. I've got a big TV behind me, and just a filming trick is you adjust the brightness to make sure it doesn't blow out the rest of your colors and whatnot when you're filming. So I don't always notice that. But
to be fair, I didn't notice that until I was in post-production looking
and editing
at
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have never been a huge fan of those because essentially all that they are those AV to HDMI adapters in cable form. That's all it is, designed for one system.
Agreed. But at least in those cases, unless I'm wrong, I believe they did at least tap into the RGB signal. But outside of that, yeah.
That depends on the cable. Like I know there are ones for the Super NES.
Yes, those were wrong. I'm talking about the Genesis ones.
Right. The problem, we need to check ourselves as gamers, as collectors, as people playing with things. Let me emphasize that. We play.
As in children.
Yes. we may be man-children. Some of us may be over 40, and we're not going to talk about that. But there's an absolute place for these products in the marketplace. And I loved the fact that in your conclusion you said, this is not a product for me. And that's okay. We need, as an overall community, as people who play, understand that it's okay if someone puts something out there that isn't for you. I look at like wired USB controllers for the Xbox One or the PlayStation for the Switch. You know what? I want to go wireless. Why? Because my TV to my couch is 20 feet away. I don't want to have extensions, and I've got 3 butthead dogs that walk back and forth through everything. That's not a product for me. But I can look at a product like that and assess what it does. Does it do what it's designed to do in a way that provides value for the money being paid for it? So, like, we were talking a little bit before we started recording here. By and large, I either have HD Retrovision cables or Insurrection SCART cables, or for like my Dreamcast, I've got the VGA cable. So for what I play, my NES is HDMI modded. So for what I'm playing, for the most part, I'm using good quality signals. But for something I'm only going to occasionally play, like my Saturn, that I maybe fire up 3 times a year when I really want to play the best version of Earthworm Jim 2 that I can, that HDMI cable works perfectly. I'm not capturing footage. I'm just sitting back in my game room and I'm screwing around and I'm having a good time. And I think we need to stop getting hung up on, well, this has 0.0004 frames of latency and lag, and the color palette is 3 degrees off, and the reds are blown out. You know what? For the average, I talked to a hobby shop owner just before this about like what clone consoles they should bring in the store, and one of the things that we discussed is the fact that for the target audience, they don't know what a FrameMeister is. They don't know what an OSSC is. They don't know what a RetroTink is. You know what they know? They know that if their Nintendo game doesn't work, you blow on it. And as we know here, it's one of the worst things you can do for it. But that's their point of reference. For someone who wants to get that entry level, hey, I just want to hook this up to my flat panel TV and not have it look like dog shit, these cables do an acceptable job. It's where you start. It's not where you finish. And, you know, I mentioned before, getting back into retro gaming was with the Retron 5. People hate that machine. A lot of it is just because of the whole controversy regarding where they got the OS from and everything, and they've fallen on that sword over and over with. But, you know, that's where I started with one system. I have close to 100 systems now between original OEM consoles and clones. Holy crap.
Yeah, I can relate.
So I think it's one of those and you pointed it out too, that for even going through like with the M Classic, you can even improve upon what these are doing.
Yeah, if you really want to, you can take all those extra steps. But I mean, the idea that I've always kind of gone for is like, I'm going to talk about something that excites me or interests me for one reason or another, and I'll do my best to present it to someone who's not super into the material, and hopefully it interest them enough to pursue it and go on and find even more information down the road. And if they're not, they at least got the casual understanding of what it is, you know? That's kind of always how I've kind of liked to approach things. I don't know if you have seen this in my style, I guess, but I've always tried to make videos where it's not about necessarily being like a mini doc or whatever, but it's more like, hey dude, let's sit down and talk about this subject. It's like me having a chat with somebody. That's kind of what I go for. And that's been my approach with those type of cables and things like that too. So I don't know if that comes across to you, but
yeah, it does. And it's, so, I mean, super nerd here, you know, I spent 5 years working for Radio Shack right out of high school.
Nice.
Yeah, go ahead and laugh at me now for that.
I'm not laughing. I actually, this has nothing to do with anything, but the last day of their official business operation, I went over to one and I just tweeted about it and I took a photo and I was like, I went to Radio Shack on its last day, before they kind of got rebranded anyway. Yeah,
you and Pixel Dan going to Toys R Us and everything on their last day.
I didn't go to Toys R Us.
No, I'm saying Pixel Dan did though. You know.
Oh, it's funny you bring up Toys R Us because that's actually going to come up later in this podcast. But anyway, go on.
Okay. But there was one of the taglines that we had and was drilled into us as managers was, we demystify technology for the masses. And it's really a good saying, and you can so quickly get overwhelmed with technobabble and with specs and with this and that. If you just lay it out to someone and say, if you want this, you can do that. If you want to do better, here's your next step. Again, to make an RC and a racing analogy, how fast does it go? Well, how much do you want to spend? How good does it look? How much do you want to spend?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. There's really nothing else to say on that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like...
I mean, that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
But you did kind of start talking about clone consoles, and clone consoles were another thing you wanted to discuss. So why don't you just segue right into that?
Well, and that's actually, it's funny, I did a panel at the Midwest Gaming Classic last year and the subject was why clone consoles aren't the devil. And I think it goes right hand in hand with the HDMI cables. It's where you begin. It's, you know, I don't know how many times I've been talking to someone, it's like, hey, I've got this box of old Nintendo games. Do you want them? And my first question is, well, first of all, yeah, I would always want them. But before I take them, it's like, do you have any interest in keeping them and playing them? And generally that's followed up with, yeah, but my NES doesn't work. I don't know where it is, or the controllers are broken or something like that. And that's where you take, the only way we can grow this hobby is by, I think a lot of times we get hung up on, well, I spent, you know, $18,000 on a copy of Stadium Events, which I would never do. It doesn't have to be. We wear the amount that you spend on the hobby as a badge of honor. And it should be the exact opposite of, I got such a deal on, I bought this lot, and yeah, it's got commons, but you know what? It has this really clean copy of Mega Man 3, and I love this game, and this is why. And talk about the memories, the intangible sorts of things. And that's where, like, there are some, I like clone consoles. They have their place. At the same time, I've said before, no clone console will ever accurately recreate original hardware from a budget clone console standpoint. You get into the
I was about to say we need to. Yeah, I was about to say you need to separate this because there was a time where clone consoles were just NOACs. They were just straight up garbage, cheap Chinese garbage. $20, it plays NES, but everything that is an NES poorly compressed down onto a single chip. However, things have come a long way. We've got FPGAs like the Retro AVS, and then things like the Analog NT, the Analog SG. So there are actually some legit good ones now.
Right.
And then there was a couple weird ones like the Atari Flashback 2, which was actually solid. Rock solid even. Hey!
Yeah, that's trademark. Don't do that.
I did. Hey, you don't know how I spelled it. Yeah, I do have to say that while my original stance was always clone consoles are, as you put it, the devil, now I'm kind of at the some of them are okay position.
Well, and where I'm coming from is the standpoint that, and I was going to absolutely hit on like and one of them too that's getting ready to come out hopefully soon is the Polymiga is another one that shows a lot of promise. And Analog has their new handheld dealio that they're coming out with.
Mm-hmm.
It's where you start. It's not where you end. If someone would have told me when I first bought my Retron 5, which again, people hate on, they dog that thing left, right, and sideways. If they would have told me that in 2 years I'd have 100 consoles, 600 games, every Nintendo home console for the U.S., as a Nintendo kid, every Sega home console, a Game Gear, a Nomad, most of the Nintendo handheld, I would have said you were crazy. But I got my first taste, and I liked it. I like it a lot. So
yeah, you became an addict, man.
Yeah.
Collecting that's actually my go-to line because a lot of people, when they tell me stuff, they're like, "Oh man, I got into collecting you." I'm just like, "Oh dude, I'm sorry I gave you that disease because it's a disease, man. Like we have this bug, and I'm sorry you've got it too."
Well, but I am a different, and maybe we expand on this later. I'm a different type of collector. I will never own a full set of anything except maybe the Virtual Boy, just because there's only 21 titles, so it's an easier system to collect for. And I'm okay with that. I collect stuff that like in Portland, I was looking for a copy of Proteus DOF for the Famicom. Why? Not because I had a hole in my collection, because I wanted to play it. And that's where I think collecting on a budget, being smart about it, I've turned down, or not turned down, but walked past copies of Metal Storm and Mighty Final Fight and whatnot, and regretted it later on. But now we've got not a repro, but a re-release of Metal Storm coming, and I was able to get a copy of Mighty Final Fight 2-player. It's a ROM hack, for a dirt cheap price. So for me, I was able to accomplish what I was looking for, and that's the main thing. Again, kind of bring it back around here. Talking to people and letting them know, hey, you don't have to sell your stuff if your system isn't working. There's a way you can get back into it if you really want to do it. If you want to share with your kids, because that's going to be our next generation where we hand this on to, because I hate to say this, we ain't going to live forever.
It's true.
And
most of us are in terrible shape. I mean, think about our hobby.
Yeah.
We're not going to be there much longer. I mean, you're already 40. You're basically almost out the door.
I am half dead right now.
It's true.
I mean,
at the time we record this, I turned 33 in 3 days. So I'm almost dead too, guys.
And he asked me to come up to Chicago and give him birthday spankings, and that was just weird.
And I did because I knew. I did ask him because I knew I would be in Los Angeles and he would come here and not be able to get in, so it would be funny. Frank.
Yeah, you're on. But I mean, would you agree too that it's there? at some point there is a level of elitism to this hobby, and at the end of the day, this is a hobby that we need to stop looking down on people that have, you know, and I'm not picking on this company for any other. It's just, if you have a Super Retro Trio Plus from Retrobit, you can play Genesis, you can play NES, and you can play Super NES and Super Famicom games right out of the box. And if you're having fun and you're like, you know what, this looks really good, I enjoy this, but I wonder if there's a way, I wonder if anyone's still got a GameCube out there. And it kind of gets that ball rolling. If this is fun, I'm enjoying this. I really also enjoyed this other system. Can I get back into that too?
Yeah, I agree with you. It kind of reminds me of that meme of like people sitting on a couch playing a game and a guy being like, it doesn't look as good as it would on this. Hey, the controller you're using isn't as good. Stop having fun. That meme, you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. Unfortunately, I'm with you on that. There is a large portion of the community that's like that. Now, the majority of it is not. I mean, I think it's just, you go to something like Portland Retro Expo and you see like all of us just want to do the same thing. But it's also, you have to understand, like, and you do, is that this is an ever shrinking hobby because of the generation that is interested in it is going to age out. And we are going to reach a point where kids grew up entirely on digital software and they're not going to really care that much about older stuff. In the same way that a lot of the first gen stuff, man, the people who are super into that are, let's just be real, kind of dinosaurs. And there's not too many people younger than them that super embrace like every version of the Odyssey or whatever. Like that's not that much of a thing. And it's going to eventually happen with all of them. So if you can rope anyone in to be interested in retro gaming for any reason who might help keep it alive, you should do that. You shouldn't be trying to ostracize them because they're not immediately right out of the door on the same level. It's just not how it works. It's like telling a little kid who's trying to learn how to read and get like, he's like learning the words, and then like someone who's like obviously like some sort of amazing professional like narrator coming in and just like shitting all over this kid saying, you can't read. It's like, okay, well now he's really not going to try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and your first system that you got from your mom, and I've heard you tell the story over and over, was an Atari 2600.
Correct.
You and I go to a lot of the same shows, and I know this past year wasn't as big as the year before, but there were tons of Atari 2600 stuff that people, from consoles to games to accessories and whatnot, and you know what? It wasn't selling. It wasn't.
Exactly.
The demand just wasn't there, and there have been other people who have talked about the bottom starting to fall out as our generations get older. People aren't going to want to play NES games. They want to, Super NES is going to be the floor, and then it's going to go to the N64. Although nobody likes the N64. That is one system, almost as bad as the Saturn that just hasn't aged well. Oh, sick burn on Sega. But it's going to be
just burned Nintendo at the same time.
I know, but I mean, it's the N64. They had the Trident controller. Do you blame me?
Yeah.
And I had one on launch.
I've let you express yourself. Go for it.
Yeah. I'll just keep digging. But it's going to be where, as time goes, and that's where, too, I really stress to people who want to get into this and build a library, not a collection, a library. Don't overpay. There's no reason to ever overpay for this stuff, ever. You will eventually find it somewhere cheaper in the condition you want. You just got to be patient. And patience may be several years, but it'll pay off in the end, or you won't have to pay out in the end, or anyways, you get what I'm saying there. But yeah, I think we need to be better ambassadors for the hobby. And one thing that I don't know that a lot of people realize that may not be involved in other hobbies is the one hobby that they look at as like, we need to make sure that we don't lose people to this hobby is video games. In the RC industry, the one thing they're worried about, how do we get people into RC from video games? Why? Because it's the same target demographic, the same type of disposable income. Nobody needs an RC car, or truck, or plane, or boat, or drone, just like nobody needs that next copy of Shenmue 3 because it's a terrible game. But that's besides the point.
You playing with fire, boy.
I just had to slip that one in there.
No, I appreciate it, you fucking asshole. Anyway,
at least I'm consistent.
Yeah, you are consistently a douche. I agree. Yes.
But at least I'm not a Cubs fan.
I'm really not either.
I know.
Actually, it's funny going back around to that. I remember going back to that Red Robin dinner where you're like, "Oh, your heart got warmed." I do remember when your Milwaukee Brewers lost right then and there, and it warmed my heart. Ooh.
Yeah, this podcast is over.
Ooh. Hey, you brought that. You started that, man.
Because I know you're not a baseball fan.
That's correct. I'm not.
Douche.
But you started with a Shenmue bomb. That's all you.
Okay, true. But it is a terrible game.
Anyway, moving on. No, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just saying because it was a terrible game, that's all.
Thank you.
In fact, I mean, and maybe this is where we kind of need to get into raffles. Because we're, talking about, at Mo GameCon this year, one of the things I was trying to trigger you and, said Shenmue was not one of the best games Sega ever made. And, your point was something to the effect of, I can't help it if you've got a wrong opinion. But
that's
at
correct,
least,
and I maintain that.
At least I didn't lose a raffle, though, and that's the biggest thing.
That is true. I didn't lose one either, but would you like to tell that story?
Oh, I know who did, though, and you were there for it. I was just there in the aftermath.
Well, the audience doesn't, so you need to tell them if you want them to know.
So our good friend Zach Maynard, a.k.a. Mr. Maynard, make sure you guys check him out on Twitch. He does Twitch live streams, and he is a genuinely nice guy. Little weird, but we're all a little. Actually, some of us are a lot weird, like me. But the guys, Jesse was.
You kind of said that like the Joker, so that was really appropriate.
Yes.
Like
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Not that version, the Heath Ledger version.
Yeah, I will say too.
It's a compliment.
Yeah, I didn't like the new Joker movie because it took 95% of the movie for the Joker to start jokering. Anyways.
It was also, I did like it, but it was a remake of Taxi Driver. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, good call. Good call.
Especially with Robert De Niro casting it, no less.
Yes.
Anyway, go on.
So Jesse from M Cable was there and everything, and they were doing a giveaway. It was before you could actually buy the M Classics. Our good friend Mr. Maynard got his name drawn as a winner of an M Classic before he could buy it. I believe Terry Diebolt actually...
No. He won an M Cable.
Or was it an M Cable? I thought it was
like one of the ones they had on the spot.
Okay. And Terry Diebolt, who has the Sony or the Nintendo PlayStation. Terry's a great guy,
Prototype,
by the way.
yep.
By the way, totally jealous that you were in your hotel room. You rubbed that thing all over your body, didn't you?
Dude, I have inappropriate pictures of me with it. Just letting you know. I'll show you later. You can fap later if you want.
Bastard. But so Terry draws, and they're looking for Zach, where he can, come and get his M cable, and can't be found. And they're stalling. It's like, because, they know Zach, and he's a local down there and whatnot. And finally they had to redraw. So later on he comes by, and I think you were the one who broke the news that he had, what do you do when you have a raffle? You'd never walk away from the booth. And then he did the walk of shame. But then he kind of recovered the next day. If you guys ever have a chance to go to the Mo GameCon, first of all, do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Second of all, do the VIP package because they do like an after-show lunch. Last year was at Two Brothers Pub, which was an awesome place. This year they did
a barcade type of thing.
Yeah, they did it at some kind of park, and they brought in food, and everybody got to sit down and enjoy each other's company before everybody.
Unrelated, that fried chicken is bomb. Just saying.
We will have to have you have my wife sometime because she is a fried chicken connoisseur.
You want me to have your wife? Dude.
Her fried chicken,
I just
bonehead. Although clearly she married me, so she has no standards whatsoever. So you got a shot.
Oh, well. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I'll go with the fried chicken. It's fine.
You'll love her breasts. Anyways.
Hey!
Hey-o!
I already got the Nintendo PlayStation prototype. I'm fine. I'm good.
Wait, what? You were the mystery bidder?
No, I was the one who hooked up with it.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
I hope you put a 1-up card in afterwards just to clean out the slot. But we bust on Zach, but they had another raffle the next day for a 1-up arcade Street Fighter.
I didn't think of this quickly. I didn't think of this quickly enough, but I'm not going to edit it. But I was going to say I used a Wii condom. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh dear Lord, that's terrible.
But
did it have Wii Motion Plus?
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean in this context.
Okay.
Like, is it ribbed for the thing's pleasure? Sure. Why not?
Yeah, did it have the extra little bit at the end just to fit the extra? Anyway. So they did a raffle.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, we have completely gone off the rails.
Derailed.
Here.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
This is the last time he'll have me on this again. I'll teach you.
And this is the final episode of the podcast ever. Okay, go ahead.
But the next day they had a raffle for a Street Fighter 2 1-up cabinet, and he didn't win. But he went up and made a very reasonable offer to the person, and I want to say he got his hands on one for under $100. So, and one of the cool things too is Zach loves arcade cabinets. He is a big Rush. Is it 2042?
Rush 2049
or 2049? Sorry, Zach, I got it wrong, man. But I mean, it made me feel good to see him leave the show with that. And you know, we bust on him about the whole raffle thing, but having heard the story, Ryan Schlemmer from Castlemania Games actually said, you know what, have him get in touch with me, I'll hook him up with one. And Zach kindly declined, just saying, you know, I already have one, M Classics on order and everything, I backed and whatnot. But I mean, we talk about, again, just how good this community can be when you have people like that step up for people that they've never even met and they're willing to help out. That's good people.
Agreed completely. But all right, so we are ridiculously going over time, so I'm going to go on to shout-outs right now. So everyone who is about to, first of all, if you guys don't know, this is a Patreon podcast. It goes out on Patreon first, usually around the exact time of recording, and then near the end of the month it goes public. So if you're a Patreon backer, not only do you get it early, but you get early access to all my videos, usually by a few days. And there's other perks and things over there on the Patreon. But some people also get to get shout-outs, or they get to pick subjects, or they get to be on the podcast. Gary being an exception, he did not pay anything. No, he hooked me up with a Super Famicom Junior. It's the least I could do. Like he said, pay it forward. Yeah, so shout-outs. The following people are at the appropriate level in which they get a shout-out. So thank you all these guys. Jesse Perez, Caleb Bravo, Trevor Underwood, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, Eric Perales, and Trey Wagner. Once again, that's Jesse Perez, Caleb Bravo, Trevor Underwood, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, Eric Perales, and Trey Wagner. Thank you very much, everybody. You guys are awesome. And Gary, you're not bad yourself.
Well, thanks. And one thing, just to your Patreons as well, and to everyone listening, you may not think that, like, you know, your $1 or $2 donation through Patreon makes a huge difference. I mean, your Patreon, Adam, is much larger than mine. I've got, you know, a nice sized one myself. My dad died earlier this summer.
I'm sorry, man.
And my brother lives up in Portland. The day my dad died, we found out he has stage 2 or 3 cancer again for another time. And going through treatments and whatnot, he didn't have money to fly out to my dad's celebration of life. Because of the contributions of people through Patreon, we were able to cover his plane ticket. So if you ever underestimate that, you know, what difference does a buck or two make? Trust me, it can make the difference that you can never imagine to a family. So those who do choose to donate through places like Patreon and Super Chats, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, he said that infinitely better than I'm ever going to. So thank you guys, and thank you, Gary. But yeah, now it's an awkward transition here, but thank you for that. It was very nice.
I have my moments.
Yeah. You got like 1 or 2. It's not bad. You know, you earned that one. Maybe I'll send you one of the pictures of me with the Nintendo PlayStation prototype in an appropriate manner later.
Or maybe you won't.
It's up to you. You know, you get to choose now. But the next subject was actually chosen by you as well, and this is something you wanted to talk about, and you're going to definitely lead on this because this is not an arena in which I have any expertise. You wanted to talk about soldering recommendations.
Yes, and it's one of those things that you can damage your equipment really easily with the wrong soldering equipment. I know for years, people have gone to like a Walmart or a hardware store, something like that, to get, you know, just a cheap 40-watt soldering iron. First of all, if that's your go-to for soldering equipment, please do everybody a favor, don't do it. And I don't mean don't buy the equipment, don't solder. You are not to the point where you should be soldering on circuit boards for games, for removing ROM chips, for removing EEPROMs, CPUs, PPUs, so on and so forth. Too much heat too much.
But I want to learn. Can't I learn with this?
You
Isn't this the learning one?
You can.
Entry level. Entry level. We should accept everybody. I'm just preparing you for the comments. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and you're not wrong there. But there are better choices out there if you are looking to get into soldering for doing things like, doing the RGB mod installs and whatnot. First of all, when in doubt, farm it out. Have someone who is an installer actually take care of it for you, because the worst thing you can do, and I've learned this firsthand, is fuck up a retro console because you thought you knew what you were doing and you completely ruined it. My top loader NES that I HDMI modded, yeah, I never tested it before I went ahead and did the mod because I bought it through a local store, and I'm like, hey, they've always done well by me in the past, and later on I find out that the system's not working, and I will never know if it was my mod or if it didn't work out of the box. So when in doubt, farm it out. Let a professional take care of it for you. If you want to learn to do this, unfortunately, Radio Shack's not around anymore. Although they do have
There are some locations. There are some.
They actually partnered with a
Sprint.
They partnered with Hobby. No, they partnered with Hobbytown USA. So
I swear Sprint bought them.
Sprint.
I'm actually going to look this up. I'm going to look this up. I believe you, but I don't believe you.
Well, and Sprint was going to buy some of the locations and have it be basically a secondary Sprint store within a store.
That's what I remember, but you could be definitely right.
Yep, and that was before the bankruptcy got, and all the stores shut down. They're basically doing a store within a store concept in Hobbytown USA's. So you can still get some of that stuff from there. My recommendation, if you want to learn how to solder, go on to, and I'm not pretentious enough to say solder, even though it's SOLDER. It's solder. I'm an American. Deal with it. If you want, I can even throw the Wisconsinese there in there too, eh? But
Hobbytown! You got this one, bitch.
What can I say? You got questions. I got answers. I still own...
Hey! That was beautiful. All right, anyway.
I still own stock in that company that's worth jack shit. It's worth almost as much as my Saturn collection. Anyways, why am I shitting on the Saturn so much? I don't know.
I don't know, dude. That's pretty messed up.
I think it's because you just did the video on the Saturn cables. No. What system was that for that you did the HDMI cables on? Genesis?
Genesis.
Okay. So go on and they're called breadboards. And basically, if you don't know what breadboard is, it looks like a perforated circuit board and then get some wires and whatnot and just screw around soldering on that, getting good solder joints, making sure you're not burning the boards. Practice on something that doesn't matter. Go to a hobby shop and ask them for a recommendation on a good, inexpensive, and when I say inexpensive, I'm talking probably $20 to $30, hobby grade soldering iron. 60-40 rosin core solder is what most hobby shops will probably recommend. You can also go with 63-37, tends to work well. The main thing I would say is make sure that you're not applying heat for too long, because especially for capacitors and resistors, they don't like heat. It has nowhere to go with it. You'll screw your stuff up really quickly. And if you are looking to eventually do this and solder on a regular basis, first of all, do not use a soldering gun. Use a soldering iron. Use the right size tip for the job. So use something about the size of Adam's if you're going to be soldering on something very small.
That's not what the prototype said. Anyway.
The prototype couldn't even speak English. What are you talking about?
Wow, that's racist. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, after it had Ben Heck, it didn't know what to do. Anyways... Wow.
I'm not going to ask you to explain that. Just go on.
Well, the fact he's the one that got it working.
I know that, but what is that? Never mind.
Yeah, he violated it first.
I see.
You had sloppy seconds.
I'm fine with that.
But make sure that you're not using a tip that's too large for the surface area. If you're working on a smaller tip or a smaller surface area, you want it more of a pencil-sized tip. If you're working on larger, really for working on games and for working on systems, generally you'll use either a wedge blade or a pencil tip to get most of the things out. never go cheap on your equipment. It's one of those things where it's just going to cause more problems later on. Don't use that desoldering braid if you have to remove something. Invest in a decent desoldering iron. And if you don't have one, if you can't afford one, then again, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Decent desoldering irons are a little bit over $100. But it's like people, you walk into a mechanic's garage, you see all these tools. It's an investment. You start with one thing, and eventually you move on and you add to the collection. That's why the Snap-on tool guys are like a crack dealer, or it's like the guy from the arms dealer from Resident Evil 4. What you buying?
Yeah.
What you selling? So, and just
I remember that guy.
Just don't get in over your head. And when in doubt, don't be afraid to ask someone who's done it for longer.
There you go. Moving on. So it's funny you brought up Toys R Us. This was like the only thing I added to this, which was Toys R Us is reopening, sort of, but not really. Did you hear about this?
Well, I knew they had the online version that they were calling like Jeffrey's Toy Box or something like that. And
yeah.
Through, I want to say it was through on the West Coast, it's Fred Meyer. Everywhere else in the country, it's Kroger. They were having, like, in some of their stores, they had freestanding, not exactly a kiosk, but like an impulse rack or something with just some odds and ends crap. And but I knew that they were coming back. I hadn't heard that it was definitively back then.
It's not, the point I'm going with this is it's not really back. Plus, I also need to stress, because only Americans think this, that Toys R Us is gone. It's actually still very active in like every other country that it was in. I mean, you can drive over the border into Canada and they just have them there. It's not a big deal. It was just us that didn't have it anymore. However, there is a quasi new one that is set up in New Jersey, and I guess there's one coming down to Texas. But they're not really stores. They're like just kind of a marketing attempt to see what people would be interested in. It just kind of more or less advertise toys is what it's looking like, as opposed to just being a straight up toy store. I don't think we're going to get Toys R Us in the traditional sense back to the United States. At least not for quite some time. It is actually possible because that company is not actually dead. Like I said, it's actually doing quite well in other countries. It was actually doing well here. It got screwed over by its corporate overlords. So it's possible it will return in some form, hopefully like a real big box store. But it's when I see these like links about it and everybody's saying, oh, Toys R Us is back. It's like, no, not really, no. What do you think?
It never really went away. It's not the McRib. It doesn't just go away and then come back for part of the time. I think it's big in Canada, and I want to say in the Netherlands too. It's bigger as well.
They have them in multiple countries. It's in the UK. It's in Portugal. It's in Australia. It's in Japan, Canada, obviously. Those are ones I've been to. They might be in others as well. It was mostly the US ones that closed.
But it's one of those things, too. What kind of hurt them and honestly hurt a lot of other companies in recent years is when you have a race to the bottom as far as being a discounter, nobody wins because you have no margin for the stores to be able to cover operating expenses. And when you have no profit left, you basically have no business model left.
Correct. And the point of the story wasn't so much to like down everybody. It was more like, it's cool, Toys R Us, you still care about it, I guess, but it's not really back. So if you want to visit one, again, we have a friendly neighbor to the north. You can go there. They got plenty of them.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was talking to my wife the other night. So our youngest is going to be 9 months old here in about 2 weeks. And I looked at my wife the other night. It's like, you know what? She is never going to have the experience of going through a Toys R Us over Christmas and kind of, pointing out, I want that, I want that, I want that, versus just being happy with what she has.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. Same with the Blockbuster kids. They're not going to get that either.
Unless you're in Bend, is that where it is?
It is, yes. Yeah. You should do that. You should have gone out there.
I thought about it, and actually, so it's funny, before we recorded this, I was actually texting with my brother who lives up in Portland. And I mentioned I was going to do the podcast with Adam tonight. And I mentioned my brother who went to PRGE with us and everything too. He's like, "Who is that again?" I'm like, "Oh, he's the dude that looked like he didn't shower for 4 days and only wore only wore a
it was 6 actually. 6, thank you.
Blockbuster and you wonder why that Sony's place or that Nintendo PlayStation has to be blown out so hard. But I said, it's the guy who looked like he was homeless, hadn't showered in a couple of days, and wore nothing but the Blockbuster sweatshirt. He's like, oh, that guy was awesome. I'm such a dick.
Who cares? But yes, you should go down to that Blockbuster if you ever get the chance. But that's not the point of the subject. But.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess that's really all I want to say on that. Is like, it's cool. Toys R Us has got some visage of still being around, but it's not really back. And he's right. It's not the McRib. It doesn't come back seasonally. If it ever comes back like for real, it will be kind of like Radio Shack, in that the original business operation, although technically Radio Shack, that was like their second or third, because they originally were a different company anyway. Point is, the traditional Toys R Us that we know is probably not coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, and quite honestly, I don't know that it needs to come back in the state that it was. I mean, it was clearly unsustainable, as much as it hurts my heart that it's 3 sizes too small.
The thing is, it wasn't Toys R Us itself that had the problem. It was its parent company. And if you go to the ones in the other countries, especially like Canada, you'll see it immediately. My Canadian buddies were telling me the American one being closed was amazing for them, because as long as they had the corporate overlord that was screwing everything up, the Canadian Toys R Us couldn't upgrade their infrastructure. They couldn't get new stock. They couldn't do anything. And as soon as they finally shut down here, the Canadian ones could go free and like upgrade everything. And that's exactly what they've been doing. So that's how it was around the world. They just had bad corporate ownership. It's a long story. I think Dan Rather, of all people, did like a really good video explaining it. So if you should go check that out.
And if you really want to see it happening again in real time, just keep an eye on GameStop.
Oh yeah, that's a crash in the making right there. That's wow. Well, we'll save that for another time. But getting back around to video games is a good way to segue there. This was something you wanted to talk about, was and you mentioned it already a little bit, is being a Nintendo fan who's suddenly embracing Sega. I'm curious, because as fellow man-child who forgets that it's not 1994 anymore, I want to delve into this subject, so go.
Well, okay, so I had, like you, my first console was an Atari 2600, and then I was actually alive to remember the video game crash, because I'm old and shit and broken now. Dude, yeah. I've got arthritis in my thumb and everything. Skidding old socks. But, I begged my parents for an NES, and I got that, and then a Super NES. And, I bought from there I was actually old enough I bought my own N64. But I had always kind of had an eye over at what Sega was doing. And I remember, my friend in 4th and 5th grade, Kyle, he actually had a Master System. And it's like, this thing is actually pretty freaking cool. And you can use Atari controllers with it. I have those. So, we would play stuff on there from time to time. And then at one point, I actually traded a bunch of my Transformers stuff to a friend for a Sega Genesis, because I wanted to play Sonic 2. And I know you hate Sonic. I know this, but...
Oh, yeah, no, I hate him. He's the worst.
I know, but you know what? For someone who loves action platformers... I wanted to play it, and then...
Actually, in all seriousness, the first Sonic game, I actually legit don't like.
I know. I wasn't kidding. I know that you're not...
Oh, I thought you meant as a character in general.
No, I'm just saying as far as the games, I know you're not a huge fan of the early Sonic games.
No. Sonic 1. That one's... Sonic 2 is possibly my second favorite game of all time, but Sonic 1 is... It was probably better when it came out, but it didn't age well compared to its sequels, in my opinion. I know a lot of people disagree, but if you're gonna play Sonic 1, it's funny you mentioned this, and you've been dogging the Saturn the whole time. The best version of that is probably the Sonic 1 iteration on Sonic Jam on the Saturn, because they added spin dash capability.
Oh, so it's almost like Sonic Mania?
Yeah, except it's actually Sonic 1. Sonic Mania is a good game.
Yeah, but the first, minute and a half, 2 minutes of the first level in Green Hill Zone feels like a direct, copy-paste of the first Sonic game. So that's just my point of my point of reference and comparison there. But so I had a Genesis, and I actually traded it in and got another Super Nintendo after a while, just because, the control is just, I didn't have a 6-button control. I just had the 3-button, which I didn't care for. And I really just wanted to play Super Mario, as sad as that sounds. And I had never owned another Sega console until 2 years ago. And then I got my hands, I bought a Genesis. Actually, I bought a Tower of Power. It was, the video is on my channel where I bought it off of eBay, and the dude put it in like just this piece of shit USPS box with no packing around it or anything. So literally, if you push down on the top and bottom of the box, you were hitting the console. But it had.
I'm going to ask you, finish your story, but then I'm going to ask you some trivia about what you just said. But go ahead.
Okay. So I bought. It had the Tower of Power and everything in it. So it had. I've got a 32X, a Sega CD. It was a Model 2 Genesis. Later on, I bought a Model 1 high definition because I had heard there was the better video output. And then just slowly but surely, I started picking up, other Sega consoles. 2018 at Mo GameCon, I bought my Master System because I wanted to play, and you might know this, the 3D version of Zaxxon for the Master System, can you play that in 2D? Because I want to play that game.
I don't have it. I'm not sure. I assume so, but I don't know.
Double Dragon is great on the Master System. Rampage is amazing on the Master System.
What you need to do? You need to ask people in the European community. The British community especially would be able to answer that. The Master System was like the NES there. It was stupid popular.
And then later on, I wound up picking up, I bought a Saturn about a year and a half ago from our local game store. And I actually owned a Dreamcast before I bought my Saturn. The Saturn was the last Sega console home console I had bought. I had one of my Patreon backers actually sent me a modded Nomad that had built-in rechargeable battery pack and everything, and he did the screen replacement, so it looks great. I have to say I've dogged the Saturn. Actually, the system I should be dogging is the Dreamcast, and I know you're going to hate this. I don't like.
I've literally rolled my eyes.
I know. But I don't like RPGs. And
it's fine. The Dreamcast doesn't have that many of them.
And at least a lot of the games that I've seen for the Dreamcast, I've either already owned on other consoles or I like the versions on other consoles better. And quite honestly, I don't like the Dreamcast controller.
So that is a common modern complaint, some of which is valid. A lot of it isn't. Like the controller is a product of its time. It's just what it is. And I feel like the Retro Fighters one might address that for a lot of people. The games thing.
If I can interrupt you real quick, I have a Retro Fighters Dreamcast controller, and it's
there. You go.
It's amazing.
There you go.
It makes me want to play the Dreamcast. So
perfect, problem solved. I will. So the games themselves on the Dreamcast, lots of them are fantastic. The real flaw there is that Sega was very willing to re-release them so prolifically. So there's really not a whole lot of exclusive content left on the Dreamcast, which is sad. But that doesn't take away from what the games on the console actually were. To each their own.
And that's fine. And that's fine. But I will tell you, I will probably say that at least 1 or 2 days. I mean, with everything I have going on with 2 kids, full-time job and whatnot, I don't have as much time to just sit down and play. But when I do,
hell yeah, I agree. I can relate to that.
there's better than a better than not chance that if I'm just going to sit down and play something to enjoy, I'm not capturing footage. I'm just enjoying a game. It's my Master System, especially with
that's
HD
very
Retrovision
odd for an
cables.
American. That's very odd for an American. I mean, it's cool, it's unique, but it's odd.
Well, and especially with the HD Retrovision cables going on my OSSC, the thing looks gorgeous. It looks absolutely beautiful.
I know, isn't it insane? That was 1985.
Yeah, it was. And if you look at, especially, what am I thinking of? I'm looking at my R-Type. R-Type is pretty much almost an arcade perfect port for that era.
Yep.
Double Dragon, it didn't have the character limitations that the NES did. Same with Rampage as well. I'm just I'm looking over at my.
You should get into the European library if you haven't done that already.
So here's a question for you because I honestly don't know.
Shoot.
Is the Master System region locked?
No, it is not.
Sweet. All right, I will have to dive into that.
The games generally run at 60 hertz as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, not at all instances, and you would really want to consult more with like someone in the UK specifically.
Okay.
But it's definitely worth looking into. They got a ton of stuff that we never got. I mean, like a ton,
Well,
because it was a massive hit there. The NES as we know it was basically the Master System in Europe. It was substantially more successful there.
Well, and the one thing, and this is, I know people who are more Nintendo purists are going to hate on me for this one. I prefer 90% of the Master System controller over the NES controller. I just don't like the D-pad as much. That's the only minor thing that I think the NES was better. But just, you don't get the controller corners eating into the side of your hand when you're marathon gaming with the Master System like the NES. Maybe Nintendo knew that, hey, nobody's going to want to marathon game with our system, and Sega did what Nintendo didn't. What can I say? But it is fun going back and realizing what I missed and experiencing these things for the first time. Now, some things are not as good as others. I don't think the 32X is very good, but clearly neither did Sega because it didn't live very long.
That's such a complicated story. Actually, it goes back around to that trivia I was going to ask. I'm going to do it now while we're on the 32X because it's relevant. So you said the Tower of Power, right?
Right.
That's what Sega now calls it, since like the Mini and all that stuff. That's just kind of what it's become known as. They only gave it a name once back when it was actually relevant, and they never really pushed it. So it's an obscure piece of trivia. Do you know what its name was?
I have no idea.
So people are clear on what we're talking about. It's if you had a Sega Genesis and a Sega CD and a 32X all together, that combination actually has a name. It's now referred to as the Tower of Power, but it had a different name.
It wasn't.
And it's a terrible, terrible name.
Well, and it wasn't the Neptune because that was a standalone console, wasn't it?
Or it was gonna be. That was a prototype.
Right.
That was a prototype of a 32X and a
2X.
Genesis in one.
Yep.
Yeah,
and actually, it was a
Sega
very
CD
sleek looking. It was a sexy looking console.
Yeah, there actually, this is totally unrelated, but there were people who were making like custom shells of that for a little while, and you could, basically make custom guts of a Genesis and a 32X, kind of flatten them out and fit them in there, so you could have a Neptune as if that was necessary. But that was a thing for a little bit. I remember that. But no, do you give up? Do you want to guess?
I have no idea.
It's such a comically bad name. It's kind of like when you hear someone say their password is password.
Oh, it's a typical Sega. Okay, let's hear what typical
No.
Sega did.
It's bad. It's the name is The Machine. Your silence says everything.
Yeah,
that was actually it was. They didn't exactly push it. It's not very. It was only like printed up a couple of times in a handful of promos back in the day, but it was just called The Machine, and it's like, okay, all right, that's great.
Well, and one thing I'll say too is my discovery of the Sega library all over again, and on some of these systems for the first time, kind of mirrors and mimics what I found with some of the Japanese consoles as well. Like one of my other favorite systems that I have that I love it. It's such a great system, and I wish we would have gotten it here. The Sharp Famicom Twin Turbo. That is such an amazing system.
It's still basically the NES, but yes.
It does so much more. Just the sound differences.
Oh, I know that, but I for some reason I thought you were going to lead into that with like a console we truly had no version of. But anyway, go on.
Well, no, I mean, and we didn't have like that 2-in-1 with the. I wish we would have gotten the disc system. I wish we would have gotten those games. I wish we would have gotten the enhanced audio games. Playing Metroid through a Famicom disc system and then going back and playing it on the NES, you're like, what the fuck is this? Is there something missing?
Okay. With that in mind, are you familiar with the FM synthesis sound of the Master System?
I am, and it's actually one of the next mods that I am looking to do to any of my systems. And I know there's a mod that's kind of similar to that for the Genesis. I think it's for the Model 2. Again, that's that same Patreon backer of mine that sent me the Nomad, Jason, also sent me a Genesis Model 2 that it's got S-video output on it, and he did the audio enhancements and everything. It was really freaking cool.
I could be wrong, but I kind of remember that some company released an add-on, like retroactively, like one of the newer companies did some sort of FM cart that you could use for Master System games.
Okay.
Does that ring a bell?
No, I had seen an actual mod chip.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing. I think somebody got it down to just being on a cartridge.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Almost like a Game Genie or something like that.
Yeah, to that extent, yes. I'm trying to see if I can find an image of it just to be sure, because I swear that was a thing. But maybe I'm not remembering that correctly.
Are you smoking the crack again?
Oh, here it is. The Power Base Mini FM by Stone Age Gamer.
Oh, yeah. That actually, and I'm familiar with. I was actually talking to someone about that earlier tonight because they were asking if I'd ever tried the. Hyperkin has their Retron adapter for Masters. Does Master System, does Game Gear, and I want to say it does their Hue cards as well for the Retron 5. And I brought up the Stone Age Gamer thing. I didn't realize I had the audio enhancement on there too. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued by your theories, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Mine?
I want to say that was a Mythbusters thing.
I don't know. You've lost me.
Obscure reference number 247 for this podcast.
What, Mythbusters?
No. I'm intrigued by your theories, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like if I were to ask you, am I missing an eyebrow?
No, I okay. Anyway.
So there's this guy in Chicago. Yes. He wore number 23. Maybe you've heard of him.
Yes, I know. We built a statue to him. Well, is that it? That was your story?
That's all that I got. Yeah.
All right, great. Then we only have one subject left here, and it's really just kind of a thank you to everybody. This is, at the time this comes out, this will be basically the end of the year, which is the end of the decade. So I want to say happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year. Stay safe. Also, this is my 10th year on YouTube, so I want to thank you guys for having me around. It's been awesome. Looking forward to continuing on with the new year, and thank you, Gary, for being here.
Well, thanks, Adam, for having me. I hope that I have backed up my claim that I do have a face for radio. So, and clearly so do you, which is a good thing.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And just to echo what you said, Merry Christmas to you and Happy Holidays, my friend. Safe travels. I know you're getting ready to go here, there, and everywhere like you always do.
It begins.
Yep. Happy New Year's to everybody. I've actually been on YouTube since 2007, so I've got you beaten by a couple of years, but only 2 years for myself. So,
what does that mean?
That means that I launched the YouTube channel for the company I worked for on November 28th, 2007. And
I mean, I did that too. I had an older channel, but I didn't make content for it.
Oh, I did. That's why people have asked, let's see your first video because it probably looked really shitty. And I show them mine. They're like, yeah, this isn't your first video. And I show them, and yeah, that was the first one. You suck.
Yeah, times change.
Yep. But I do just want to say, thank you again for being awesome, for everything you do for the retro community. It's definitely appreciated.
My pleasure, man.
And
thank you for what you do.
Go Bears?
I'm not a fan.
Oh.
They're the only Chicago team that has not won in my lifetime.
You weren't alive in '85?
I was born in '86.
Oh, well, technically January of '86. Oh, no, you would have been, yeah. 11
I was born on
December
8th. December 8th, 1986. So I just had a birthday, or I'm about to have a birthday, depending on when they hear this.
Yep. So, yeah, they've won one in my lifetime. That's okay. My baseball team has never won a World Series, so I got that going for me. Growing up in Milwaukee, being a Brewers fan and a Bears fan, there is a lot of losing to deal with.
Yeah. I know it was a sour spot for you, but watching the Cubs win was amazing. Even though I'm not really a Cubs fan, it was more like civic pride, but that was cool. I was in San Francisco at the time, though.
Next topic.
Yeah, well, that's cool because that's the end of it. So, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. If you could like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff, really appreciate it. Check out Gary at Rock Solid Productions, which I'm not allowed to say, so I'll bleep that part out. And I'll put a link in the description to his channel if you guys can go check that out. Appreciate it. Anything else you want to tell him, where to find you, all that stuff?
Let's see. We're on all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Rock Solid Productions. Now it's ROXOLID because being a Gen Xer, everything has to have an X and can't be spelled the appropriate way and whatnot. And again, I said it a little bit earlier regarding Patreon, but in general, for everybody who watches and listens sincerely, thank you. You guys and gals out there are the reason why we do this. You make this fun. So. Thanks again to everybody for listening and checking us out.
Hell yeah. All right, bye everybody. Thanks.